Welcome back everyone. Welcome back to another video with Pratham Test Prep. So this is our Friday series where we talk about different strategies that you can pick up for the exams that are coming up. Right. So the exam that is recently coming up is LSAT. Right now LSAT, we'll talk in detail what exactly LSAT is offering to the students, and we'll understand what strategy you can take care in your mind while you're going for the paper, and what all you can keep in your mind while you're going for the admissions process into the colleges, right? And which colleges to choose from, what are the colleges that are available. Every option we'll discuss till the end of the video. So before we proceed, I would just request you all to hit a like button and subscribe on the channel so that we can keep getting our updates and keep following these all strategy sessions that are happening. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Sanjeet Bhatia, and I'm a graduate from National Law University, Bhopal. And today we'll be discussing what strategy you can take care for your March attempt. And people who are going for June attempt also, I'll give some small tips for them too, so they can take care about on that note. Okay. So first, beginning on the basics, right? What are the dates that are there which are important for an LSAT paper, right? There are few dates that you have to remember. First is your registration date. If you are planning to give the paper in the month of March, your dates are gonna end on 14th of March. The last date for filling the form is 14th of March. When is the paper? The paper is on 25th of March. So the people who think that they are ready with their courses in different subjects and they think that they can write the paper in March, they can definitely go ahead for that, right? Because it's gonna be before the board examination hits you hard, and you'll be done with your LSAT exam and you will get your results also. Now, some people who think that they want to study for the boards and are planning to give the LSAT exam and want to consider the colleges under it can go on the June attempt, right? So the June attempt, the deadline closes till on 4th of June, and the date for the exam is 14th of June. So it depends on like your preference, what you're looking forward to take. But if you ask a person who's of like a who's preparing for boards and having difficult subjects, I would recommend them to go for the LSAT exam later on. But the people who have a little easier subjects in your board examinations, people who don't have mathematics or think that their subjects are easy enough, they can go for these exams right now and get done with it and prepare for the other law entrances that are available in the market, right? Coming to the next part, what are the score weightages that are given in the paper, how the paper is divided, what happened in 2020. So you can see that every section was reasonably like balanced here, right? So analytical reasoning had 23 questions, with the time allotted is 35 minutes. So here you have to understand that there is a sectional time limit. Okay, so after 35 minutes the section will go away, right? There will be no section that you can see. So if you've been given analytical reasoning at the first, you will just get 35 minutes for that section. After that, you will not be able to come back to the questions of analytical reasoning. So that is the first thing that you have to remember, that there is a time limit for every section. Now there is logical reasoning, which is divided into two parts. Then you have your reading comprehension, and this makes the total number of questions somewhere around 92 to 100 questions you get in the paper, but 92 is the number of questions that we have seen coming up in the papers. Now the time that is allotted to you is 2 hours 20 minutes, obviously, because 35 minutes for each section. So in the end of the day, the total comes down to 2 hours 20 minutes. Now what you have to understand is, what is the scoring scheme in the paper, right? How are you being scored? What is the thing that you have to remember? So the thing is that India LSAT also gives you a scoring between 420 to 480, right? This is the scoring scheme that they've kept, and there is no negative marking in the paper. So basically, you will not be penalized for every wrong answer that you give in the paper. You can straightforwardly, if you think that the answer is right, or you think that there's a 50-50 chance that you'll be able to get the answer right, you should definitely go ahead and mark that, because there's no negative marking. And every question counts equally. That is also a thing that is also considered as a good factor that you can see here. Now what happens is that people will say that someone gave the paper in May and some in March, and someone gave the paper in June, right? So there might be a difference in the scores that are there. So what LSAT says, that they are using a statistical procedure called equating, right? What do they do in equating? that they give the scaled scores, right? What do they do is like they give some questions difficult in some section in some paper and keep it easier in the other section. So they try to keep the paper on the similar level, and that's why they go for equating, so that they can reflect the same amount of ability in the students by taking different papers, right? So basically keeping the levels of the paper equal. That's what LSAT does. They call it as equating, right? So that's how the scoring is done in the paper. So you have to remember the higher amount of percentile that you will get, right? The percentile is decided from the score of the person who has scored the highest in the paper, right? You have to understand that the higher percentile you get, the more amount of chances you have to get scholarship in colleges like Jindal Global and admissions in NMIMS and UPS Dehradun, if you look forward to go for these options too, right? So the higher the percentile, the better your chances get, right? Coming to the next part, what do you have to do for analytical reasoning, right? Analytical reasoning, according to LSAT, we'll be discussing the facts that LSAT has stated what they expect from a student to know. You have to understand that they're the best people to make you understand what exactly the paper is what they're releasing on their website, what information they are providing you regarding the paper. That is what is going to help you to deduce the paper in the end of the day, right? So the first thing that comes up is what is happening in the analytical reasoning questions. What do they want you to do, right? So first they want you to do is to comprehend the basic structure of relationships, right? Like for seating arrangements, what they have given as an example is seating arrangement for 6 diplomats around a table. So basically the problems that come up in analytical reasoning include seating arrangements. They want to tell you that, right? Reasoning with condition if then statements and recognizing logical equivalent formulation for such statements, right? So syllogisms and things of that sort also come up, but they have to check that if then statement, if this is happening then will this happen. They have to check your reasoning on such kinds of statements. So you have to understand, by not checking the law and checking your analytical reasoning, they are getting you on a parallel line, right? Because they know if the person can think of if or then situation, they'll be able to understand that what will happen if a law is applicable in a scenario, right? So they are testing you on the parallel lines, rather keeping the law aside. They are keeping you on the lines where they will check the skill that is required to be a lawyer rather than the knowledge that is required to be a lawyer. Okay, now they will also check that what could be true and what could not be true. Are you inferring that from the statements, right? Now, are you able to recognize the logical equations between the statements, or you are able to apply conditions to those statements where there is a rule applicable or something of that sort, which requires your mental capability and intellect in a skilled manner, right? As you can read, that they want you to logically equivalent the context by identifying a condition or a rule that could replace one of the original condition while still resulting in the same possible outcomes, right? So they want you to replace certain things from the question. Say they say that A is the father of B. Now they remove father from it and makes it son. So how it works out, right? Is the same outcome possible? So they will check you that way in your analytical reasoning skills. Now coming to the next part, that what are the topics that are there that are included is arrangements, selections, comparisons, intersection types, directions, okay, coding and decoding problems, family based problems, basically family tree, okay, then logical deductions. Coming to the next part, what are the tips that you can take care if you are going for the analytical section? Okay, first you have to understand that you can skip the whole set of questions that are there, right? Rather than if you see that there's a passage which is looking problematic, you can just skip the whole set of those questions and can move ahead to the next part, right? Rather than coming back, like just solving one part of it and coming back to it, and then you will need time to get acquaintance back to the passage, because there are a lot of passages that you will be reading on that particular hour. So it will take a little time for you to get reacquaintance with the passage. So rather than doing that, rather skip the whole passage and come back to it if you have finished other questions in the same section, right? Now you have to also understand that the passages or the comprehension based questions that are coming here, you have to read them very carefully, right? Because you have to analyze the exact relationship that they're trying to draw from certain, right? Now also what LSAT says that you do not have to make unwarranted assumptions about things, right? For example, if they say that someone is 6 feet 2 inches but his weight is 34, right? You have to agree to it, right? You cannot assume that a person who's 6 feet 2 cannot be of 32 kgs, right? You have to just accept to the fact that is being given there, right? So because what LSAT says is that the conditions that they've put in the questions are clear as possible, and they are not intending to trick you. They are simple equations that they want you to form. They are not meant to trick you off. Okay, so that are the tips for your analytical reasoning section here. Coming to the next part, what happens in logical reasoning? I'll be very clear in logical reasoning and very quick about this section, right? They just want to test you on how well you can analyze a situation and how well you can answer those questions, right? What are these questions? These are the skills that are required, right? Argument and relationship, patterns in reasoning, well-supported conclusion. You are able to understand analogies, which is in syllogism, right? That all cats are dogs, but not all dogs are cows. So what will be the analogy in the end? So these are all the things that they want you to have while you are going for this section. These are all the skills that are required by you. Now coming to the next part, that what are the things that you can understand while going for the logical reasoning section, right? First, that you understand the meaning of each question that they're asking you. You cannot just be like, you don't understand it, then still you're trying to solve it. First, understand the meaning of the question, then only start solving it. Second, do not pick a response simply because it is true. Okay, कि yeah, ये सही लग रहा है, ये true है statement. It might be true, but it might not be the right answer. You have to check in the question what they exactly want from you. So you have to search from the right answer, although the statements given in the question might be true. Okay. Now answer each question on the basis of the information that is given, even if you don't agree to it. ठीक है, you have to follow the principles or the information that is given in the passage clearly. You cannot just go and say that this is not possible. It is possible because it is written in the paper. You have to agree to whatever is written in the examination. Don't use your pre-made assumptions from home inside the paper, or it is logical reasoning, so use your logic in the question. Don't get your logic from the outside world in the paper. Okay, work within the context where the paper works or the passage is given or where the question is taking you. Don't go outside the context and start thinking. Okay, coming to the next part, what are the topics that you have to look while you are preparing for your logical reasoning section? It's simple, right? These are the basic logical reasoning questions that we have seen so far in LSAT, right? Clocks and calendars, numbers and letter series, Venn diagrams, seating arrangements, logical sequence, logical matching, blood relations, and syllogism. So if you see that blood relations, syllogism, clocks and calendars, numbers and letter series, and Venn diagrams, these are amongst the important ones, and seating arrangement, they come up the most of the times in the papers. Rest of them are not that visible in the paper, but still these are important sections because the questions might pop up. Even a single or two questions from each section that we have not mentioned here can make or break your paper and can result in the scholarship that you are trying to apply in these universities. Okay, coming to the next part, reading comprehension. Now reading comprehension will also have your comprehension based questions, which will require you to analyze the passage according to the view of the author, right? You have to understand that the view of the author has to be taken, the context has to be understood for the passage to be answered, right? You have to take out the right inferences from the passage. You have to understand it in the manner that the person who was writing it was taking it in his mind, right? You have to understand it completely from up to down so that you are able to analyze it and give the answers there. So every passage will have 5 to 8 questions under it. So you have to understand that each passage that you read, you have to read it in a manner that you are able to answer all these 5 to 8 questions, so that you are able to save time in the paper and go ahead in the sections or inside the same section that you are and invest that time that you have saved in some other question that you're not able to understand. Okay, so what does your reading comprehension basically covers? What are the sections that might pop up in your reading comprehension? according to the LSAT committees, is like they might ask you something about the social political issues. It might be related to humanities or social science or biology or scientific fields or some area of law, right? Some area of law can genuinely pop up because you are going for a law entrance test, so they might check you about some small passage from some legal problems that they have seen around, or anything, any paper cutting or something of that sort might pop up in your reading comprehension questions, right? Coming to the next part, that what are the tips that you can use for reading comprehension. So a lot of students have to understand that while you were in school, the comprehension based questions were asked from the passage itself, right? They were not every time context based, they were mostly the question based answers that you had to write in your paper. But here, when you are able to, like, when you are like expected to know the analysis of that passage and to know the context like an author, then there is a close amount of reading that is required there, right? So now you have to first skim through the passage as soon as you read it, right? As soon as you get it, you have to skim through it. And I have told my students in my earlier presentations and earlier sessions also that use your peripheral vision while you're reading anything, right? That helps you to engrave more inside your mind, right? What is peripheral vision? That rather than keeping your sheet in front of you, you can keep it in a little side and you can read it so from your side eyes, so that makes your peripheral vision, right? Peripheral vision improves your memory lane like in the future if you keep on practicing it a lot, right? Now what you have to understand, that there might be a lot of right answers in the same passage that will be coming up, okay? Now these right answers may not be closely linked to the question, so you have to find which right answer is closely linked to the question. That is the one that is gonna get you the marks. Rest everything else would be a wrong answer. You have to find the right relation to the question. Rather than finding the right answer, you have to even find the relation of that answer to the question. You have to understand that very carefully, that analysis and taking it from the view of the author is the most important thing that they expect out of you here, okay? Now there might be some words that you might take a note of, right? They are important. Why they are? Because they are transitional words, like they are transitioning the meaning of the whole paragraph, or they are setting the tone, or they are giving you a structure to the passage. Now these terms can be like although, nevertheless, correspondingly, right? So these terms, these are the connector terms or the transitional words that might, although this might change in the future. So these are the transitional terms that might come up in your passage, and you have to mark these terms while you are reading, so that it grasps your attention towards the transition that is happening in those reading comprehensions, right? So these are the basic tips that you can take care while you are going for your entrance tests for LSAT, right? Now the last thing, that what are the colleges that you can consider while you are going for the LSAT examination, right? So these colleges are OP Jindal, NMIMS, UPES, Bennett University, and there are 20 more, like 87 universities are being recognized by LSAT for the papers that the admissions will go on in these universities. But you have to choose the right ones for yourself, the universities that are the ones that will get you a recognition in the fraternity. So you might opt for OP Jindal, and these LSAT scores will also help you to get scholarship in OP Jindal, right? So these are more or less a scholarship exam for OP. So if you are planning to get into these universities, you can definitely appear for an LSAT exam. It is not a requirement for the students to know the law here. It is a basic analytical reasoning and a reasoning based test rather than a knowledge based test, as there is no GK involved in the paper. So the students who are not fully aware of GK and they think that they want to give the paper in March, but they are not well prepared with GK and other law related things that are being asked in other law entrances exams, you can make sure that you are giving this paper, because these things are not required for this exam. You just need to practice your analytical reasoning and logical reasoning skills and be sure about your reading. That's all is required for you to go for the paper. Now the people who have filled the form for your LSAT, what are the tips that you can follow in the next 3 weeks that you are left with your preparation? Firstly, people should stop reading the theoretical stuff right now, right? So if you're reading theory, that is not gonna make any difference for you, right? Rather than you start practicing the questions, okay, like logical reasoning and analytical reasoning. Practice is the key right now rather than reading the theory. Theory might not fetch you that many marks, right? Believe in the practical aspect of that theory right now. Believe in the applicability rather than learning the theory. The theory is not gonna get you anywhere in this paper. Practice is what will get you to the like the higher maximums, like the mark scale that you can see between 420 to 480. You can get a higher percentile and will fetch you a better scholarship and a better university that you might opt through this examination particularly, right? So in these next 3 weeks, stop focusing on your theory, start focusing on your practical knowledge. Secondly, you have to understand that consistent amount of effort is required for this paper. Why? Because it is a skill based exam rather than a knowledge based exam. So what is the difference between this skill based exam is that you require a consistent amount of effort and consistent amount of technique using while you're practicing, right? If you're not using your techniques properly, you'll never be sure about them before going for the exam. So you have to use your techniques and you have to understand that what works best for you in the paper, what will be the technique that you will be using while you will be in the exam, and how will you tackle the questions when you don't know them, or how will you tackle them like if you need to solve a method, or how will you analyze a question. That's what you have to understand, and you have to practice a lot. Start giving the mocks if you haven't given the mocks yet. Get into the habit of giving the exam in the time that is being perpetuated, which is 2 hours 20 minutes for 92 questions, right? So these were some tips that you can use while going for LSAT. We will be discussing the strategy for June again with the students who are going for the June paper, and we will also analyze the mock test and the test that literally happens in the end of the March. With the people who are going for June attempt, we'll be discussing the LSAT paper also, right? So it was nice having you all today for this lovely session on Friday. We'll see you again on Monday with another interesting session on the current affair news that you can look forward for your CLAT and AILET examination. So you can hit the like button and subscribe so that we can meet again on Monday. Was a nice session today. Thank you all.